Gallatin city leaders are talking about whether or not to let seniors who make a certain amount of money get a break on their utility bills. The resolution surrounding the senior rate assistance would reduce sewer and water bills by 10% for eligible households. You must be over 62 and be at or below federal poverty guidelines. We will let you know what those members decide to do.